mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says all that transpires on earth and all beyond are parts of an illimitable plan. The one keeps in his heart and knows alone. With always our love and blessing, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 5, The Book of Love, Canto 1, The Destined Meeting Place, page 441. But now the destined spot and hour were close. Unknowing, she had neared her nameless goal. For though a dress of blind and devious chance is laid upon the work of all-wise fate, our acts interpret an omniscient force that dwells in the compelling stuff of things, and nothing happens in the cosmic play but at its time and in its foreseen place. To a space she came of soft and delicate air that seemed a sanctuary of youth and joy, a highland world of free and green delight, where spring and summer played together and strove in indolent and amicable debate, in-armed disputing with laughter who should rule. Their expectation beat wide sudden wings, as if a soul had looked out from earth's face, and all that was in her felt a coming change, and forgetting obvious joys and common dreams, obedient to time's call and the spirit's fate, were lifted to a beauty calm and pure that lived under the eyes of eternity. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the compilations of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, book The Psychic Being. Topic: Become conscious of the psychic being, need for sadhana. This is taken from the question and answers of 1955, 17th August 1955. Our Divine Mother says, in the ordinary life, there's not one person in a million who has a conscious contact with his psychic being, even momentarily. The psychic being may work from within, but so invisibly and unconsciously for the outer being that it is as though it did not exist. And in most cases, the immense majority, almost the totality of cases, it's as though it were asleep, not at all active, in a kind of torpor. It is only with the sadhana and a very persistent effort that one succeeds in having a conscious contact with his psychic being. Our Divine Mother says, naturally, it is possible that there are exceptional cases, but this is truly exceptional and they are so few that they could be counted, where the psychic being is an entirely formed, liberated being master of itself, which has chosen to return to earth in a human body in order to do its work. And in this case, even if the person doesn't do the sadhana consciously, it is possible that the psychic being is powerful enough to establish a more or less conscious relation. But these cases are, so to say, unique and are exceptions which confirm the rule. In almost all cases, a very sustained effort is needed to become aware of one's psychic being. Usually, it is considered that if one can do it in 30 years, one is very lucky. 30 years of sustained effort, I say. It may happen that it's quicker. But this is so rare that immediately one says, this is not an ordinary human being. That's the case of people who have been considered more or less divine beings and who are great yogis and great initiatives, says our Divine Mother. Question. Sweet Mother, you wrote to me that it is not easy to come in contact with the psychic being. Why do you consider it difficult? How should I begin? For this, our Divine Mother says, I said not easy because the contact is not spontaneous, it is voluntary. The psychic being always has an influence on the thoughts and actions, but one is rarely conscious of it. To become conscious of the psychic being, one must want to do so, make one's mind as silent as possible, and enter deep into the heart of one's being beyond sensations and thoughts. One must form the habit of silent concentration and descend into the depths of one's being. The discovery of the psychic being is a definite and very concrete fact as well. Who have had the experience know, says our Divine Mother. Next subtopic. Psychic change, the first necessity. This is taken from Sri Aurobindo's Letters on Yoga Part 3, the psychic being and its role in sadhana. In this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the soul and psychic being is in direct touch with the divine truth, but it's hidden in man by the mind, vital, and the physical nature. One may practice yoga and get illuminations in the mind and the reason. One may conquer power and luxuriate in all kinds of experiences in the vital. One may establish even surprising physical siddhis, but if the true soul power behind does not manifest, if the psychic nature does not come into the front, nothing genuine has been done. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, in this integral yoga, the psychic being is that which opens the rest of the nature to the true supramental light and finally to the supreme Ananda. Mind can open by itself to its higher reaches. It can still itself and widen itself into the impersonal. It may too spiritualize itself in some kind of static liberation or nirvana. But the supramental cannot find a sufficient base in a spiritualized mind alone. If the inmost soul is awakened, if there is a new birth out of a mere mental, vital, physical into the psychic consciousness, then this integral yoga can be done. Otherwise, by the sole power of the mind or other part, it is impossible. It is certainly better if the psychic is conscious and active before there is the removal of the veil or screen between the individual and the universal consciousness, which comes when the inner being is brought forward in all its wildness. For then there is much less danger of the difficulties of what I have called the intermediate zone. Everything is dangerous in the sadhana or can be except the psychic change. Purification and consecration are the two great necessities of sadhana. Those who have experiences before purification run a great risk. It is much better to have the heart pure first,
for then the way becomes safe. That is why I advocate the psychic change of the nature first, for that means the purification of the heart, the turning of it wholly to the divine, the subjection of the mind and vital to the control of the inner being, the soul. Always, when the soul is in front, one gets the right guidance from within as to what is to be done, what avoided, what is the wrong thing or the true thing in thought, feeling, and action. But this inner intimation emerges in proportion as the consciousness grows more and more pure. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, there is nothing to say except that the most important thing for you is to develop the psychic fire in the heart, aspiration for the psychic being to come forward as the leader of the sadhana. When the psychic does so, it will show you the undetected ego knots of which you speak and loosen them or burn them in the psychic fire. This psychic development and the psychic change of mind, vital, and physical consciousness is of utmost importance because it makes safe and easy the descent of the higher consciousness and the spiritual transformation without which the supramental must always remain far distant. Next subtopic, emergence of the psychic, bringing forward the psychic. This is taken from the Life Divine, Part 2, the Triple Transformation given by our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the true central being is the soul, but this being stands back and in most human natures is only the secret witness, or one may say a constitutional ruler who allows his ministers to rule for him, delegates to them his empire, silently assents to their decisions, and only now and then puts in a word which they can at any moment override and act otherwise. But this is so long as the soul personality put forward by the psychic entity is not yet sufficiently developed. When this is strong enough for the inner entity to impose itself through it, then the soul can come forward and control the nature. It is by the coming forward of this true monarch and his taking up of the reins of the government that they can take place a real harmonization of our being and our life. A first condition, says our Lord, a first condition of the soul's complete emergence is a direct contact in the surface being with the spiritual reality. Because it comes from that, the psychic element in us turns always towards whatever in the phenomenal nature seems to belong to a higher reality and can be accepted as its sign and character. At first, it seeks this reality through the good, the true, the beautiful, through all that is pure and fine and high and noble. But although this touch through outer signs and characters can modify and prepare the nature, it cannot entirely or most inwardly and profoundly change it. For such an inmost change, the direct contact with the reality itself is indispensable, since nothing else can so deeply touch the foundations of our being and stir it or cast the nature by its stir into a ferment of transmutation. Mental representations, emotional and dynamic figures have their use and value. Truth, good, and beauty are in themselves primary and potent figures of the reality, and even in their forms as seen by the mind, as felt by the heart, as realized in the life, can be lines of an ascent. But it is in a spiritual substance and being of them and of itself that that which they represent has come into our experience. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says in Letters on Yoga Part 3 about the emergence or the coming forward of the psychic and says, the soul in itself contains all possible strength, but most of it is held behind the wheel, and it is what comes forward, and it is what comes forward in the nature that makes the difference. In some people, the psychic element is strong, in others, weak. In some people, the mind is strongest part and governs. In others, the vital is the strongest and leads or drives. But by sadhana, the psychic being can be more and more brought forward till it is dominant and governs the rest. If it were already governing, then the struggles and difficulties of the mind and vital would not at all be severe, for each man in the light of the psychic would see and feel the truth and more follow it. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, what is meant by the psychic coming to the friend is simply this. The psychic ordinarily is deep within. Very few people are aware of their souls. When they speak of their soul, they usually mean the vital being or the mental being, or together the false soul of desire. The psychic being remains behind and acts only through the mind, vital and physical, wherever it can. For this reason, the psychic being, except where it is very much developed, has only a small and partial, concealed and mixed or diluted influence on the life of most men. By coming forward is meant that it comes from behind the wheel. Its presence is felt already in the waking daily consciousness. Its influence fills, dominates, transforms the mind and vital and their moments, even the physical. One is aware of one's soul, feels the psychic to be one's true being. The mind and the rest begin to be only instruments of the inmost within us. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it seems to me that you must know by this time about the psychic being, that it is behind the wheel and its consciousness also. Only a little comes out in the mind, vital and physical. When that consciousness is not concealed, when you are aware of your soul, the psychic being, when its feelings and consciousness are yours, then you have got the consciousness of the psychic being. The feelings and aspiration of the psychic being are all turned towards truth and right consciousness and the divine. It is only part that cannot be touched. It is the only part that cannot be touched by the hostile forces and their suggestions. The psychic being emerges slowly in most men, and even after taking up sadhana. There is so much in the mind vital that has to change, readjust itself before the psychic can be entirely free. One has to wait till the necessary process has gone far enough before it can burst its age-long veil and come in front to control the nature. It is true that nothing can give so much of inner happiness and joy, though peace can come by the mental and vital liberation or through the growth of a strong samatha in the being. Our Divine Mother gives answer to a question, Sweet Mother, how can one know that the psychic being is in the front? For this, our Divine Mother says, my child, when it happens, one understands. When it happens, one understands. It is exactly so long as one doesn't understand that it means that it hasn't come. This is like people asking you, how can I know whether I'm in contact with the divine? That itself is enough to prove that they are not. For if they are, they can no longer ask the question. It is something understood. For the psychic, it is the same thing. When the psychic is in front, one knows it, and there is no possibility of any doubt. Consequently, one no longer asks any questions. The sense of release, as if from a jail, always accompanies the emergence of the psychic being or the realization of the self above. It is therefore spoken of as liberation or mukti. It is a release into peace, happiness, the soul's freedom, not tied down by the thousand ties and cares of the outward, ignorant existence, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next question, sweet mother. Once the psychic has come to the front, can it withdraw again? For this, our Divine Mother says yes. Generally, one has a series of experiences of identification, very intense at first, which later gradually diminish, and then one day you find that they have disappeared. Still, you must not be disturbed, for it is quite a common phenomenon. But next time, the second time, the contact is more easily obtained. And then comes a moment which is not far off when, as soon as one concentrates and aspires, one gets a contact. One may not have the power of keeping it all the time, but can get it at will. Then, from that moment, things become very easy. When one feels a difficulty or there is a problem to be solved, when one wants to make progress, or there is just a depression to conquer, or an obstacle to be overcome, or else simply for the joy of identification, it is an experience that gives a very concrete joy. At the moment of identification, one truly feels a great joy. Then, at any moment, whatever, one may pause, concentrate for a while, and aspire, and quite naturally the contact is established, and all problems which were to be solved are solved. Simply to concentrate to aspire, and the contact is made, so to say, instantaneously, says our Divine Mother. There comes a time, as I said, when this does not leave you. There comes a time, as I said, when this does not leave you, that is, it is in the depths of the consciousness and supports all that you do and you never lose the contact. Then many things disappear. For instance, depression is one of these things, discontentment, revolt, fatigue, depression, all these difficulties. And if one makes it a habit to step back, as we say, in one's consciousness and see on the screen of one's psychic consciousness, see all the circumstances, all events, ideas, knowledge, everything. At that moment, one sees that and has altogether sure guide for everything that one may do. But for this, perforce, you take a very long time to come, says our Divine Mother. Aspiration, constant and sincere, and will to turn to the divine alone are the best means to bring forward the psychic. If desire is rejected, no longer governs the thought, feeling, or action, then there's a steady aspiration of an entirely sincere self-giving. The psychic usually, after a time, opens of itself, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo.